Most flights are totally routine. They take off, they land, and that's that. But when things go wrong, the big question is always, why? Today, we're going to dig into an official NTSB report to uncover the chain of decisions that turned what should have been a short 100-mile flight on a clear day into an absolute tragedy.
So, let's set the scene. It's March 20th, 2011. A small Cessna 150 aircraft with the tail number N4178U crashes in a wooded area in Wisconsin. There was a student pilot on board and he had a passenger with him. Sadly, neither of them survived. To really figure this out, we're going to walk in the footsteps of the investigators, using their official report to piece together exactly what happened.
The plan on paper was super simple. A short cross-country flight, just a little over 100 nautical miles, from a small airport in Illinois up to another one in Wisconsin. I mean, it's the kind of trip pilots make all the time. But this one ended very, very differently. Okay, so here are the basic, undisputed facts laid out by the National Transportation Safety Board. We've got the plane, the date, the route, and the tragic outcome. Now that last point, substantial damage. That's NTSB speak for the damage being so bad that it basically compromised the entire structure of the plane.
And this really gets us to the heart of the whole mystery. The flight took off in beautiful, clear, sunny weather. So the central question for everyone involved is, how does a perfectly normal flight on a perfectly fine day end in total disaster?
To answer that, we turn to the folks at the NTSB. They're the independent federal agency that has to investigate every single civil aviation accident in the U.S. Their whole job is to be methodical, stick to the facts, and figure out the probable cause, all so that it doesn't happen again. So everything we're about to go through comes straight from their final report on this crash.
And the NTSB, well, they pretty quickly zeroed in on what they call the defining event. It sounds a little technical, but trust me, it is the absolute heart of this story. A VFR encounter with IMC. All that means is that a pilot who was flying by looking out the window flew straight into weather where he couldn't see a thing, and he just wasn't trained for it.
To really get what happened here, you have to understand these two terms. VFR, visual flight rules, is basically flying by sight. You can see the ground, you can see the horizon, you know which way is up. It's how most small planes fly. IMC, on the other hand, instrument meteorological conditions, that's like flying blind. You're inside a cloud or thick fog and you've zero visual references outside the plane. Highly trained pilots do it all the time using just their instruments. But for a pilot who isn't prepared, it is incredibly disorienting and incredibly deadly.
So you might be wondering, how in the world can investigators know what happened inside that cloud? Well, they use technology. Things like radar data and GPS let them digitally reconstruct the plane's final, frantic moments. It's almost like creating a digital ghost of the flight path.
And this is where things get really, really telling. The planned route? A simple, straight line. Easy. But the actual flight path that they pieced together from radar data? Well, it was anything but. You can see the pilot was making all these course and altitude changes, and the NTSB report itself described the final 15 miles as jagged. That is a huge red flag that the pilot was in serious trouble.
And this data, man, it reveals the classic textbook signature of spatial disorientation. In those last moments, the plane entered these tightening right turns. This is exactly what happens when a pilot who relies on sight gets stuck in a cloud. Your body is telling you one thing, but the plane is doing another. You lose all sense of up, down, left, and right. You trust your feelings instead of your instruments, and that almost always leads to a loss of control. The radar signal just vanished, a little over half a mile from where they eventually found the wreckage.
This leads us to the next big piece of the puzzle. The pilot didn't just stumble into one random cloud. No, he was flying head-on into a completely different weather system. The weather he left behind was nothing like the weather that was waiting for him.
Just look at this comparison. It's night and day. Where he took off, visibility was 10 miles. Clouds were way up at 8,000 feet. Basically a perfect day to fly. But where he was going, visibility was down to 4 miles and getting worse, with a solid, thick layer of clouds just 700 feet off the ground, plus mist. He was flying from clear blue skies directly into a wall of weather that required flying on instruments.
So this begs the most important pre-flight question of all, right? Did the pilot even know what he was flying into? Did he bother to check the weather along his route before he took off?
And the answer from the NTSB report? It's just a gut punch.
After looking everywhere, investigators could find absolutely no record that the pilot got any kind of weather briefing before taking off. He was, quite literally, flying blind into a dangerous and rapidly worsening situation. So with a finding like that, the investigation obviously had to shift its focus directly onto the pilot himself. Who was this person, and what kind of experience and training did they have for a flight like this?
His logbook, which they actually recovered from the wreckage, showed he had a grand total of 55 flight hours. Now that's not a lot. He was still very much a rookie, still learning the ropes. But that's not even the most critical number.
This is the number that really tells the story. Of those 55 hours, he had only half an hour, 30 minutes, of simulated instrument training. Just 30 minutes of practice for the exact life-or-death scenario he flew into. He was nowhere near equipped to handle flying in the clouds.
And on top of the lack of training and the terrible planning, the NTSB found two clear-cut violations of federal aviation regulations. First, as a student pilot, he needed an instructor to sign off in his logbook for this specific trip. He didn't have it. And second, student pilots are absolutely forbidden from carrying passengers, so the flight was illegal from the moment the wheels left the ground.
So let's put all these pieces together. You know, in aviation safety, they talk a lot about an accident chain. The idea is that crashes are almost never caused by one single thing, but by a series of linked events and bad decisions. So let's look at how the NTSB wrapped this all up.
And here it is, the official probable cause, straight from the report. It wasn't a broken engine, it wasn't some freak storm. It boils down to two human things: bad planning before the flight and a bad decision to keep going during the flight, which led to that final fatal loss of control.
And here is that accident chain, laid out link by painful link. It all starts with bad planning, not checking the weather. That's link 1. It continues by breaking fundamental rules, flying without permission and with an illegal passenger. Link 2. Add in a complete lack of experience and training for the situation. Link 3. Then comes that terrible in-flight decision to push forward into bad weather instead of turning around. Link 4. And the inevitable result, spatial disorientation and a complete loss of control. Each link locked to the next, creating an unbreakable chain that led straight to tragedy.
And that just leaves us with this one final sobering thought. This wasn't one single catastrophic mistake. It was a series of small, seemingly minor decisions. The decision to not check the weather, the decision to take a friend along, to fly without the right sign-off, and the decision to keep going when things started to look bad. It really makes you ask, how many small, bad decisions does it take to create one enormous disaster?